Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for our psychology department's alumni panel today. We're really excited because we've got 4 amazing alumni here from the psychology department here to talk to you about their amazing work experience, their experience in their undergrad programs, and sort of how they use that foundational knowledge in their careers. So we can see we've got 4 panelists today with a lot of diversity in their background of the type of work that they've gone into and their experiences. So really excited to have them talk to you today. And we do have, if you noticed on the sessions page, there was the opportunity for you to sign up for a one-on-one with each of these alumni, and we do have a few open spots. So Tessa Coleman, if you want to chat her privately in the chat, if you're interested in signing up for meeting with one of the alumni. So we're going to do, the first hour is going to be the presentation from each of them, and then from 2 to 3 we'll have the opportunity for the one-on-ones. So we do have a couple slots open. If you're interested in meeting with them, and you can see if there's a slot available, just send a private chat through the chat to Tessa. She just put something in the chat so that you can identify her. So go ahead and do that if you're interested in meeting with any of them one-on-one sometime between 2 and 3, and we can let you know if there's a spot available. Okay, so how this will work is we'll start as the larger group from 1 to 2, as I said, and then from 2 to 3, if you do end up going into one of those individual sessions, just make sure to meet back with us after, because we'll come back into the larger group. Tessa will take care of getting you into the breakout rooms if you're signed up for a one-on-one with one of the alumni. Okay, so I think we can get started. Our first alumni that's going to speak is David Galura. If you'd like to go ahead and get started.
Sure. Thank you so much for inviting me back. I appreciate all of the staff that has reached out to me, and it's a pleasure to be back in Ann Arbor, even if it's virtually so. As they mentioned, my name is David Galera. I graduated from the University of Michigan in 2016 with a degree in biopsychology, cognition, and neuroscience. I had a lot of great experiences in the psych department. I think I just want to highlight my favorite class, and if you guys ever have a chance to take it, I want to pitch it. It was called neuropharmacology. I think it was Psych 456 or something like that. And it was about drugs of abuse. It combined it was kind of the intersection of 2 areas that I'm really interested in, which was the social aspects of addiction and also the kind of biological and neuroscience aspects of how different drugs interact with our brains. So that's my pitch. That was my favorite class at Michigan. I thought it was just super, super interesting. Next slide, please. So while we're working on moving, that happens to me all the time when I'm trying to advance slides on Zoom. So 24 hours after I graduated from the University of Michigan, I joined the Peace Corps. Does anyone happen to know what flag this is? If you could maybe put it in the chat, or if somebody wants to unmute. Does anybody have a guess where this flag is from? Any geography buffs in the chat? If not, that's okay too. I can just tell you. So that's actually the flag of Mozambique. So after I graduated, I was a community health outreach specialist in Mozambique. Essentially, my job there was to work with counterparts, community-based organizations, and hospitals to design and implement programs which were aimed to reduce the spread of HIV, increase adherence to antiretrovirals, and decrease the stigma surrounding HIV. I additionally worked in malaria prevention and youth and gender empowerment. While I was working there, the background and kind of the skills that I learned from my time in the psych department were absolutely essential while designing these programs. Behavior change and behavior change communication were 2 of the biggest parts of my jobs. And the stuff that I learned, the frameworks, the models that we learned in social psychology and behavioral psychology were absolutely essential while I was putting these programs together. Next slide, please. After I finished my time in the Peace Corps, I moved to Washington, D.C. and started working in private industry and international development and global health. My first job was with a company called Chemonics International. While I was there, I was backstopping a $24 million USAID funded project. The goal of this project was to reduce malaria and work with social and behavior change communications. And again, my background in psychology, what I learned at Michigan was absolutely essential while I was doing work planning, putting work plans together, when I was doing activities, when I was in the field, working with different populations. What I learned in psychology was absolutely essential to what I was doing. After my time at Chemonics, I was recruited to go to a company called Palladium. It looks like the logo is a little bit washed out in this slide, but that's okay. It's another company based in Washington, D.C. And I was doing very, very similar work, but this time it was in health policy. So I worked primarily in family planning, reproductive health, COVID and HIV. Again, just the skills that I was able to learn, kind of carry throughout my career, I thought were really, really essential. I'm currently a consultant with a company called Head Global. I primarily do business development and financial operations and management consultants with them. But again, this is a global program, so I'm working kind of all over the world, doing what consultants do, which is a little bit of everything. And in addition to being a consultant, I'm actually a graduate student at Columbia University, getting a degree in health policy and management. And in the summer of 2022, I'll be doing an associate position with Deloitte in healthcare consulting. So yeah, that's a little bit of my current career and my background. And some advice I would give to students is that the psychology degree you get from Michigan is incredibly broad. It really teaches you how to think, how to interact with others, teaches you how others think and how we interact with the world around us. It's so broad, and the skills and frameworks that we learn in class and kind of with our peers and professors are translatable to just about any industry you want to go into. I was passionate about global health, and that's where I took my career. But my advice would be to don't limit yourself to just things that you think a psych degree can get, or a psych degree you can do with a psych degree, because the skills that you gain at Michigan within the psychology department are transferable to just about anything you want to do. So my advice would be don't limit yourself, really follow your passions and kind of dive into more of what you think you're interested in at Michigan. There's so many different programs, different organizations that you can kind of explore your interest in. And my advice would be to just dive into those head first. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on my email or via LinkedIn or in a one-on-one session. I'm happy to talk about international development, global health, decolonizing global health, and even graduate school and consulting if you're interested. Thank you so much again for inviting me to this panel. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. Really appreciate it. It was great. And next we have Donna.
My name is Donna Neddo, and I'm a digital content producer, videographer, and artist. I graduated from the University of Michigan in 2009 with a bachelor's in psychology and a minor in Afro-American, and African studies. And I also have a master's in art, entertainment, and media management from Columbia College. You can go to the next slide. So, as you can see on my career timeline, I've done a multitude of different things, but what I can say that they all have in common is the ability to connect well with others, creativity, and also the ability to market myself. I've always found it interesting. I've always found people interesting along with psychology, which is why I chose to study it at the University of Michigan, and also understanding why people do the things that we do. And I believe that psychology is essential in marketing. So at the beginning, let's see, after I graduated from the University of Michigan, I first was a nanny to two brothers with autism. And I also facilitated a few different diversity trainings for the School of Dentistry. And when I moved to Chicago to attend Columbia College for my master's, I worked in hospitality. And if any of you guys have ever worked in hospitality, you will know that it's essential to be good with people, to be successful in that industry. And once I graduated from Columbia, I started working at George Street Photo and Video. You can go to the next slide now. And I only took one photography class at the University of Michigan. So I basically was self-taught in photography and videography. And from that, I did a lot of weddings, events, headshots, things of that nature. So when I first graduated, I was working at George Street Photo and Video in post-production. But then after I got laid off, then I switched to the marketing department and worked there for a while. And it was around this time, I guess I have to backtrack a little bit. So the way that I got into social media was basically, I think it was my second year of grad school, and I was in a class on SEO, and my teacher was talking about making sure that you hashtag images so that they are searchable on the Google search engine. And while I was sitting in the middle of class, I had my phone out, and this is around the time that Instagram had just came about. And I knew that people were using hashtags on Instagram, but I never really used them myself. I didn't really get the use of them. I thought people were just trying to act like it was Twitter. So in class, I'm going through my Instagram and clicked on a hashtag, and then I noticed how the hashtag would bring up all the different photos under that hashtag. So while I was in class, I went through all of my pictures on Instagram. I probably only had maybe 100 at the time, hashtagged all of them. And by the end of the class, I had hundreds of likes and followers. So that's how I discovered a way to create an audience on Instagram just by doing that. So within the first year, I think I gained 20,000 Instagram followers, which was surprising to me because I was just posting just regular photography content and things of that sort. So after that, I guess my audience really wanted me to get into video content. And in the beginning, I was really against video content because I actually hate watching myself in video and all of that things, but people kept asking me for it. I saw the market for it. So I joined YouTube, and I had a couple different viral YouTube videos that had to get picked up from different publications or larger websites because I gained like 10,000 followers in one day. And from that, with my Instagram and YouTube, I just trial and error figured out how to grow an audience up to 200,000 followers on different platforms. And let's see, you can go to the next slide. I would say some of my favorite experiences in the psychology department would be intergroup dialogue and project outreach. I participated in race and ethnicity, and then I went on to train to become a facilitator for the dialogue. And with project outreach, the same as well. I worked with preschool students, and then I continued on to become a discussion facilitator. And the way that I use the skills that I learned in psychology from that is I've hosted a lot of different workshops promoting self-esteem and well-being. I've helped create viral beauty and food trends. I've gotten to speak on panels in the US and abroad. And I've also participated in the Me Too movement discussions and had over 100 women disclose sexual assaults to me. You can go to the next slide. So for the second half of my career timeline, now that I've gained a large following, I had a lot of opportunities to collaborate with different brands, mostly beauty, food, and lifestyle brands. And I was invited to speak on a panel in South Africa. And from that opportunity, I was also invited to speak and host my own workshop in Paris, which was really awesome. I've gotten to work behind the scenes for New York Fashion Week and also for Beyonce's On the Run tour. And let's see. You can go to the next slide. So I guess some of my current work, what I've done most recently, I've gotten back into doing art, and I pitched some of my designs to a wallpaper company and they loved them. So they ended up purchasing one of my designs and had me do a collaboration with them to show people how to transform my space. And I just think that you guys should think outside the box when it comes to psychology, because there's many different things that you can use your degree doing. I don't think that there's just one right path to go about using your degree after you graduate. And there's unique opportunities all around, but I also do think that it's very important to network with people, because that's how I got a lot of different opportunities, is people seeing the work that I've done with previous partnerships and people, and getting recognized and additional job offers from that. And I think that in this market, you just really have to believe in yourself, because people are investing in you as a brand, and you can use your psychology degree to connect well with others. You can go to the next slide now. So I guess I would say between maybe 2018, 2019 until now, I've gotten more into food blogging and working with different food companies to create content for them as well. I do like doing a lot more of the behind the scenes work now, and I've done a lot more commercial shoots with food and beauty brands. And you can go down to the next slide. And these are just some of the different companies that I've partnered with and worked with in the past. And with these agencies, I had to help develop campaigns. And for some of them, I would have to make sure that I would create a plan from the very beginning, the idea of the campaign, all the way to the execution. So I would have to not only be the photographer, the videographer, I would also have to be the model and everything in between to make sure that the campaigns would run well. And yeah, I think that's about it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Donna. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have Matthew.
Hello, everybody. Matthew Poland, and my company is Map Advising, which I'll tell you a little bit about in a moment. Just want to say I'm happy to be here to talk to all of you after a little over 20 years graduating from University of Michigan. I think I have the distinction of being the oldest guy in this panel, perhaps. But hopefully some of my experiences will resonate with you, and we can chat about those. So next slide, please. And all right, the animation looks like it's working. So this is my career path. And once it lights all the way up, you'll see all the various stops I made along the way from University of Michigan, including kind of changing course while I was at U of M. So the main idea of this graphic is that my career pathway was not very linear. I took a lot of left turns and right turns and U-turns, getting to where I am now. I actually started in the School of Engineering. I thought I was going to be an electrical engineer, and I took some courses there. It did not do all that well. Discovered that I didn't like it that much, and that's how I ended up in psychology. At the time, I had a psychology class that I was really enjoying, and I thought, well, I'm gonna give this a try, and maybe this is what my degree will be, and that's what I did end up graduating in. I had a really great experience in the program, and I'll tell you about a specific experience that always has stuck with me next. But I graduated in May of 2000. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do with my psychology degree. I wasn't quite as advanced as my peers out there getting internships and everything and exposing themselves to the field, which I highly recommend, is getting yourself some experience and getting out in the world if you're not doing that already. But where I started was working with court adjudicated young people. Basically, this is a juvenile hall. It was called Boysville in Michigan. Now it's called Holy Cross Services, I believe. So I was working with young people who had multiple offenses and were placed there by the courts doing what we called, I was a treatment specialist, and we were supposed to kind of be helping them learn healthy values and learning a different way of going about their lives. And I did that for almost a year when I sort of pivoted and decided I want to do something totally different in a new place. I up and moved to San Francisco, and I started working in, just started the foray into the career I have now in workforce development. I worked at a place called J. Pomeroy Center, where I worked with people with disabilities, helping them get prepared for work. So we worked on their resume, practice interview skills. I did a lot of advocacy with employers with them, trying to get them into jobs, what we call job placement and employment services. Then I went from there to start an employment services program called PEP Jobs. I helped design the logo for PEP Jobs, and what that was a program at a hospital that actually specialized in helping people with epilepsy and brain injury with employment services. So that was my first experience in sort of program design and creating new programs. And from there, I went on to manage a program at United Way of the Bay Area. It was originally called MatchBridge, but then later it was San Francisco Summer Jobs Plus, and it was a partnership with the mayor's office for youth employment in the entire city. So we ran basically the citywide youth employment program for the mayor's office in San Francisco. And we were helping young people get jobs and internships throughout the year. Big push in the summer when young people are not in school. We worked with 16 to 24-year-olds. So I got to get a little bit of experience with young people there. Around that time too, I started my Master's of Public Administration program at San Francisco State. Around this time is when I was realizing that public policy was a big interest of mine, and how public policy really drove a lot of what happened in the economy and the workforce space that I was in. And I wanted to learn more about it and to have more impact there. And I got my MPA in 2014. And then next year after that, started a job at JFF, which is also known as Jobs for the Future. It's a national organization, basically one of the biggest leaders in workforce development. So JFF basically taught me how to be a consultant. And we work with community colleges and school districts and government agencies and businesses across the country on building career pathways, particularly for marginalized populations. And it was there that I really developed my interest in the future of work, and how automation and the gig economy and now the Great Resignation, how all those things are impacting the economy, impacting jobs and career pathways for folks, and how we make sure we build programs and systems that help people get to the careers that they want to be in and that they're going to thrive in. And then so I left JFF in 2019, worked for them kind of part-time in 2020 while I started my own consultancy, MAP Advising. And MAP Advising was really solely focused on helping organizations process the future of work. There's a lot of information that comes out of big consultancies like McKinsey or the World Economic Forum about what's happening with automation or what's happening across the economy. And the organizations on the ground, the community colleges, the nonprofits, the training programs are not really sure what to do with that information. And so my organization focuses on helping them process it, digest it, and make useful that information so that they can build good programs that are going to make sure that we don't leave behind marginalized populations as things become automated, for instance. And now I'd like to, that's where I am now, focus on the future of work. But my next slide, I'll tell you when to hit the space bar. Oh yeah, that's the big reveal. So you just got a little splash of the big reveal, but let me tell the story first. So the first, the experience that sticks with me the most, perhaps from the psychology program, it was in organizational psychology, which I think for my discussion with Rachel may not exist anymore. But this was basically a psychology class about how organizations work together, what the psychology of building organizations and human resources and that kind of stuff. And it was a really interesting course, but an exercise that really stuck with me was in our breakout sessions. We were broken into groups, and we were all told that we were the leadership of a race car team. And we were given information about an upcoming race that was worth a lot of prize money and sponsorship and media. And it was really important to the race car team. And by the way, this race car team isn't doing so well financially, and they really need this. But we should also know that there's a little bit of a safety concern because at certain temperatures, the car that we have, the engine could break down. But really, even at those temperatures, there's only a 10% chance of that happening. So this is like a little bit about it at the bottom. And then we all had to discuss, and then the day of the race, we discover it's in that sort of danger zone of the temperature. And we all had to discuss, do we race? Is it a big, important race? Should we race, or is it too dangerous to race? Should we not take the risk? And so each group had to decide and then present whether they race or not, and why. And then once we all presented, it was revealed to us that the people that decided to go ahead and race had launched the Challenger shuttle. So hit spacebar, please. It should come up with the next. There we go. There's the Challenger shuttle. So for those of you that don't know, the Challenger shuttle was a big national tragedy disaster that happened in 1986 on national television. It was a big, widely publicized launch. There was a teacher on board. There were several astronauts, a teacher that was not an astronaut, and they were broadcasting it into elementary school classrooms across the country, and it exploded in the air seconds after launch. And what they told us was, we basically had the same information, the same hype and everything that was around the Challenger launch, and all that in our exercise. And they knew some of the data. If you guys go, there's actually a Netflix documentary about the Challenger launch that's really interesting. They knew that there was a danger, and there were people saying, we should not launch, we need to cancel this launch. And they were shut out and they were overruled, and the launch happened. And now that this was the result. So that was something that always stuck with me, was this experience in the psychology program. So next slide, please. So my advice for all of you. So first of all, know that you might need to change course, take risks, and try new things with your career. In other words, try not to get stuck. It's easy to be like, I'm going in this direction, or I'm going for that job, and I need to do all these things to get to that job. As the conditions change, or as you get new experiences, be open to changing course, because you probably will. I think it's pretty rare for someone to be like, the people that decide they want to be doctors at 16 and become doctors, I think they're fewer and farther between than our culture likes to portray it to be. And you probably will have to change course. So learning and skill development should be ongoing throughout your life and career. So in my field, we call it work-based learning. You should always be looking for experiences that can help you apply learning and add to it. While you're in class, you can be taking part in internships or jobs, or even just doing informational interviews with folks in the field. But it's really important to be like having that applied learning. It's always been important, but I think as we progress into the future of work, it becomes ever more important that if you don't have real world experience, the degree just on its own doesn't mean as much as the people with the degree and the experience in the real world. And then the last one, someone told this to me at one point in time, and it's always held true: don't try to be the captain of someone else's ship. I think I tried early in my career to jump into a job and prove myself and hope to get promoted and hope to be the leader of an organization, it's really hard to do. There's politics involved, there's relationships involved, and ultimately, when it's someone else's organization or someone else's project, it's really hard to be the one that's nominated to be, the leader or have a role in that. Where you can, try to do your own thing, create your own projects, or like I did, even your own organization. So that is everything. So hopefully that was helpful for all of you, and I look forward to Q&A and talking to some of you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Matthew. That was wonderful. Really appreciate it. Okay, next we've got Jessica.
Hi, so Matthew, we may have been in that same class together. I'm not joking. You sparked a memory of that Challenger exercise. I'm like, wait, I remember doing that. And as you can flip to the next slide, everybody, I'm Jessica Quinlan. I am a graduate from '01. So Matthew, you're only 1 year off of me, but this was a little self-serving, this presentation. So bear with me, everybody, on this presentation, because this was a walk down memory lane for me. When Julie and Rachel had reached out to me, I was like, oh my gosh, I can look past and back on my career and my experiences. And this is presentation's a little self-serving here. So I dug up some old memories, and it was really fun to reflect on my experiences at University of Michigan and then beyond, which I'll walk you through. But I probably, as many of you on this call and maybe some of my other panelists, I didn't walk into the University of Michigan in 1997 thinking I was going to be a psychology major. I don't want to say that I fell into it, but to be honest with you, I fell into it. You know, it's one of those decisions that just I made. I remember speaking to my academic advisor probably when I was a sophomore, and I was like, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I think we can all empathize with that. And I needed advice, and I can't remember who my advisor was. I don't remember what they looked like. I don't know what their name was, but they gave me some really solid advice that has really tracked me through the rest of my career, which is take things that interest you, that you find a passion in, or have just an interest in learning more about, and you'll find your path. And that's really, I took that advice to heart, and it's just followed me throughout my career all the way to where I am today. But you'll always be a Wolverine everywhere you go. People know who you are. They know Michigan's a good school, and it will follow with you no matter what resume you put on, to any employer. It's always a good thing to have University of Michigan on your resume. So just a few snippets of my experience there, but we can move to the next slide. So after I finished undergrad, I graduated in 01, and obviously in September of 2001, the world changed with 9/11. So I had to pivot, taking a little advice from some of the other panelists here, like you have to pivot a little bit. What you think you were going to do, you never know what's going to happen. And I really made a decision at that point. I wasn't going to be able to find probably a great job. A lot of my friends had lost their jobs after 9/11, and I wasn't really ready to do anything else. So I decided to go further my education. So I ended up going to Boston College, and I pursued my master's in counseling psychology. Always kind of knew that I wanted to do something that helped people. I didn't know what that meant though. So when I thought about career paths and what I could potentially do, I was like, well, there's nothing really wrong with getting my master's in psychology. So I did pursue the counseling psychology, which I do my concentration for school counseling in grades 9 through 12. Actually, I think it's 5th grade through 12th grade, but that's a long time ago and I couldn't really remember. I did obviously have to do a practicum. Obviously, being a clinician, you do have to do some practical work. So I did a practicum in Boston Public Schools and got my Massachusetts educator license at that time to obviously be a school counselor in the state of Massachusetts. Some of the best advice I got at this point, and I'm going to say it to everybody on this meeting today, is the best thing about a degree and learning about psychology is it never becomes obsolete. So my department head at Boston College, on our very first day of our program, she said, "Congratulations, you all have picked a career that will never become obsolete." And she went on further to explain that the reason why she was saying that is because no matter what other industry you're in, things become automated, algorithms can do work, that things can be robotic, whatever it might be, but psychology and understanding human behavior never becomes obsolete. People are people, humans are humans, and humans need other humans. And so that's always been the other point of advice that has carried me throughout my career is, while a psychology degree, you think of one path, a psychology degree, what some of the other panelists have shared, can really take you in a wide variety of options, because people need people, and understanding human behavior obviously is translatable in many different industries. But we can go to the next slide here. So at that point in I think it was like 05, I actually moved to Chicago. So that's just like a break here so we can move on. It's my favorite picture I've ever taken of Chicago. So I'll just kind of run through my career path for you guys to show you. So as you can see, I never actually became a school counselor. After I graduated from my grad program, it really wasn't resonating with me any longer. After I did my practicum in Boston Public Schools, I wasn't necessarily sure that was my path. And I was like lost again. And I ended up taking a job at Saks Fifth Avenue. And just as a placeholder, you need to pay your bills, you need to pay your rent. So I took a job right out of grad school, and about 30 days in, they were looking for an HR assistant. And my coworker who I just met, she comes over, nudges me, and she says, "Hey, Jessica, you have a master's degree in psychology. You should do that. You're smart. You can be in human resources." And I was like, human resources, I have no idea what that is. I have no idea what you do. I never studied it. I didn't know anything about it, but I was like interested in finding out more. So I ended up taking a human resources assistant position at Saks, and I worked in the Boston, Troy, Michigan, and Chicago locations. And I eventually became a senior human resources assistant. So it basically was my education, learning all about human resources. In 2007, I actually took a pivot. I took a manager role at Neiman Marcus on Michigan Avenue in downtown Chicago, and I thought I hit the big time. I'm now this manager at, one of the luxury retailers in the world. And it was a tremendously valuable experience. And you better believe you use all of your psychology knowledge. So working in human resources, you deal with a lot of conflicting personalities. And in retail, Donna had mentioned it, hospitality is a tough place to work. So is retail. People have very, very different personalities, and you have to sometimes step in and be able to help mitigate major issues. And as an HR professional, that is part of your role. And so I certainly learned how to leverage my skills that I used as a psychology and my master's degrees in psychology in order to help obviously mitigate employee relation issues. So I got a lot of hands-on experience there. I ended up getting recruited to go back to Saks. Somebody else on the panel said you got to network in your career. So every job I've basically had has been through a network. I've never really applied to a job except my first job. And so I got recruited to go back to Saks. They were looking for me to rejoin them. They had restructured. So I took this kind of opportunity to grow my career. So we can just move to the next slide. So in 2012, I actually ended up, after I left Saks, I got recruited to go to American Girl. And so American Girl, if those who don't know what American Girl is, it is owned by Mattel, and it is a experiential retailer for girls and their families, or for any children and their families. And it's a doll company. So it's all about the experience for the little girl. So I joined the organization as a regional human resources manager. We were building out our footprint, and I was overseeing a lot of growth at American Girl at that time. So for 5 years, I was heavy into the growth and building out the footprint. Definitely had to leverage a lot of varying different skills that I've had to, pull upon. I started at this point in my career, became a people manager, and being a people manager is very different than being an independent contributor. You have to really figure out what motivations are for your employees. And so you have to kind of find the root cause. In 2017, I was actually promoted to head human resources for American Girl. So I was the head of human resources for the retail restaurant division for American Girl. At that point in my career, a lot of strategic planning, collaboration, leading. My leadership skills have really, were definitely leveraged as the head for that division. And in 2019, I spent a tremendous amount of time at American Girl doing a lot of very tough decisions. I did a lot of layoffs and restructuring, and really having to do a lot of different work that is just a lot and tough. And so I ended up taking a sabbatical, as I called it. I took some time off and I traveled the world. It was a moment for me to take a breath and step back and be able to kind of reflect on what I want to do next in my career. I'd spent a tremendous amount of time doing retail, never really planned that path, but it was such a great experience to leverage what I've built upon through my school counseling years, all the way through my human resources. But I needed a break, so I was able to take some time off, and we can go to the next slide. And so full circle career. So as the first slide indicated, I am currently the director of human resources for Chicago Public Schools. So in the city of Chicago, we employ about 40,000 employees in the city of Chicago. My team only oversees and supports 7,000 of those 40,000 employees. My team oversees all of the central office employees. So we are more the business side of the operation, not necessarily the school side of the business. But when I was recruited for this opportunity, I was recruited, and I thought it was a really great opportunity for me to go back into education and leverage some of those skills that I left behind from my early part of my career. And it has been tremendously helpful to have my psychology background in this job, because a lot of the departments we support are obviously supporting children and youth. And there are a lot of areas where I leverage those skills that I have from way back when. I'm still able to leverage what I've learned throughout my education. And we can go to the next slide. And so how does it all come together? So, I mean, I've talked a lot about obviously my career path, and it's like, okay, you're in human resources. What does that really mean? How does that really intersect with psychology in general? Well, as I mentioned, you know, the best advice I had been given was you've chosen a degree that will never become obsolete. And being a human resources professional, you know, you definitely have to understand that human behavior. You know, what I tell my team all the time is you always have to figure out what the motivation is, or what's the root cause of something, in order to solve for it. And I definitely leverage those skills that I learned throughout my psychology education to be able to understand those root causes, figure out where it's coming from. And that way we can help solve for the problem, not just a surface level issue. Because if you're going to just solve for the surface issues, you're never going to be able to solve anything. Throughout my career also, and you see some of these brands on here, Crucial Conversations. I also have my people, I have a data analytics background, as well as situational self-leadership. As part of my career path, I've had to leverage a lot of continuing education for me to be able to do a lot of leadership development trainings, having very difficult conversations with employees. I lead a lot of those trainings. I have to leverage all of those skills that I've learned over my career. I do have statistics on here because I tell you, you know, you have to take statistics to get a degree in psychology. You definitely use it. I use statistics in my data analysis almost on a daily basis. So it does come in handy, definitely need to know it. And then obviously human development and organizational psychology, which Matthew's example is really great, understanding the dynamics and making those decisions within the organization. So, you know, like I said, I'm going to end it on this. You've picked a career or a industry or a degree that will never become obsolete. And there are very, very many different paths that you can go with. And obviously human resources, there's a very clear intersection between human behavior, but how people interact in that in the workplace. And it's definitely been tremendously helpful for me throughout my career. Even though I took a pivot from being a counselor, I definitely am a counselor on a daily basis, leading a team and also obviously supporting an organization. And I definitely look forward to meeting with a few of you one-on-one.
Great, wonderful. Thanks so much, Jessica. Yeah, this was really illuminating for me, so I can imagine for all our students as well. So it looks like we have